Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching and listening to us from. Welcome to the Talent Plug podcast. I'm your host, Francis Mulumba. So this is a space where we unravel stories behind extraordinary talents from every corner of the marketplace. And in this episode, we're privileged to have a special guest who is an HR expert, and his name is Owen Kabanda. Owen, welcome to the Talent Plug podcast.
Thank you so much, Mulumba. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I think I haven't done myself, I haven't done you justice because I need to give you a proper introduction. It's a quite lengthy introduction, so I may have to read it. So Owen Kabanda is actually a seasoned human resource practitioner of over 15 years. He has practiced both in the private and the public sector, driving HR excellence for leading corporations. He specializes in strategic HR management, including organizational structure and development, as well as staff recruitment, training, and policy development. So his approach combines technical HR expertise, as well as having a deep understanding of business needs and HR strategies. I think that's a much more befitting introduction to you, Owen.
Thank you so much.
So thank you again for coming through to this space. I'm really privileged to have you on the show, and I'm pretty much sure that we're going to have a positive interaction and something that is actually very meaningful for our guests.
Yeah, it's really a great pleasure, and I'm very happy to be here. You're doing a great job. This is really what is needed to help a lot of people in the corporate world and various institutions, companies, to see how best they can actually get to understand, to manage their talents, and to get the best out of that employment and employment relationship, I call it.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes it can be confusing. So, great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, Owen, I'd like to start by having to just have you speak into, who Owen is, maybe even before we get into the professional aspect of HR. We'd like to know who Owen is. Can you just please describe yourself?
Well, there's a lot of aspects when it comes to who Owen is, but what I can talk about, I was born and raised in the village, in Mukosa village, in northern province of Tamongwe there, as you're going to Chitimukoro.
Right.
Yeah, so that's where I grew up from, primary and secondary school, basically going on foot. I like that part of my history because it gives me a lot of motivation when I do a lot of things. I came to Lusaka to do my bachelor's degree at the University of Zambia. I was there from 2004 to 2008 when I graduated. Yeah, so right from there, when I finished in 2008, that's when I joined a consulting company called Bitmas Human Resource Consultants. So that's really where a lot of interest in human resource started from, because now all of a sudden I was being introduced to looking at various companies. As a consultant, you are going into various companies and looking at how they're operating, and then you help them to a matter of structure, is it employee issues, skills issues, trainings, and so on. So that's where my interest really in HR really started. But before that, like I said, I'm purely a village guy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So in terms of, you've talked about having your first qualification at the University of Zambia. What did you study?
So I studied, my major was public administration with psychology as a minor.
Okay.
So at first I actually wanted to do development studies.
Okay.
Because that was the course that I liked a lot. But then I started having more interest in how to actually manage institutions, because, like I said, coming from the village, and I was being given, even in school, some roles in terms of leadership, even when I was at secondary school. So those kind of things started making me to think I need to really learn more about how to manage people and how to manage institutions. So the public administration aspect was helping me to understand how to manage institutions, and the psychology was helping me to understand how to manage the people, because in every institution now you have people, and those people, they are really different. Even the same person, today, tomorrow, you'll be acting in a very different manner. So I took those two courses, but when I finished my first degree, then I went on to study my master's now. I got a master's from the University of Zambia. I was one of the first guys who were sponsored by the Norwegian government.
Nice.
So I did my master's in neuropsychology. So that one was for 3 years. Now it was purely focusing on now the study of the human brain. So you basically now drill to every bit what makes you to think this way, what makes you the human being to act in this way. So you even put, the brain there. You cut, you open it. Yeah. So nice. Because you have to understand every the system that is there. What does this part, the front part, the back, the side, what does it do to make a human being behave in the way they behave? So those are the kind of things that actually help me a lot even in my career as I interact with employees and managers and so on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for breaking that down. So you talked about how you pretty much started out in a consultancy firm.
Yeah.
And like in my preamble, I talked about how you've worked in both the public as well as the private sector.
That's true.
I've always tried to, marry these two, or pretty much just find out what are some of the key differences of HR practice in the public sector versus the private sector. What would you say some of the key differences are?
Well, when you look at the private sector, one of the things that you associate with the private sector is, for instance, a lot of speed.
Yes.
You could sit here, have a discussion, you make a decision, and things are being implemented.
Yes.
When you go to the public sector, it's a little bit different. The number of processes and procedures you have to follow. So when it comes to human resource, I'll give an example. In human resource aspect, you could be doing some projects and then you need to hire the people, maybe the managers may just have to fill in a small form.
Yes.
We need 10 extra guys. It's approved because we need to get the job done.
Yes.
So as HR, you run around. You can easily bring in somebody, you hire them. You can have a small committee. In the private sector, there's a lot of movement, there is a lot of speed that you see. Now, when let me just give you my own example, because when I left consultants, I went into Minwood Finance.
Okay.
From Minwood Finance, I went into Entrepreneurs Financial Center, working with the Canadians.
Okay.
Again, it was this kind of speed, where you make decisions, and the next thing you're implementing, and you move on. It could be issues around salaries. Yes. It could be issues around staff welfare. You kind of make decisions very fast. The same thing happened when I left in 2015, 2018. I was with Motor Angel during the rehabilitation of the greatest road from Luangwa to Chipat and the border with Malawi. Even there, it was a private company, so with about 1,600 employees, again, you move very fast because you want things done. I joined the public service. I'm with Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, and we're looking at over 36 companies, subsidiaries. One of the things you start to observe in public service is that, like I said, you have processes.
Yes.
Certain things, you have your work plans and the budgets which have been approved, and you work with that in the coming year, the year that budget has been approved. Then on top of that, certain things require committees. So even in as much as you may want to go in a particular direction, you have to make sure that you have followed the entire process.
Yes.
Because by you jumping a particular process, when the auditors come, yes, you did what you did.
Yes.
But then you have gone against your own procedures.
Right.
So that now requires, if you need things to move faster, it requires you to really know how do you work around the policies to make sure that you can implement, you can be efficient. Remember, even for things like recruitment, you have maybe target to recruit within 60 days or 90 days. How do you make sure that you get this when your policy says you have to advertise? So even if I know that you are the person that I want to hire, I can just come direct to you.
Yes.
There's a process that has to be done.
Mm.
And in some cases, people say, the public service things are too slow, but the processes are there also to protect the players, the officers who are in that space.
Yes.
Because again, if you do things, you can also be charged for, abuse of office,
Yes.
failure to follow procedures. So the key issue, private sector, public sector, is to really, as an HR person, for instance, or any professional for that matter, you have to understand those, first of all, the policies that apply, then the procedure that you need to follow, so that it affects even the way you plan. If you need something at a particular time, plan in advance, so that you can really still get things done in a more efficient manner. But working also with those procedures, they also provide some level of, fairness and, allowing people. Let's say if the policy says you have to advertise, you will have to advertise and get everybody to participate in the process, rather than just because we met over the weekend, we had some coffee, and that's the one I'm hiring. No, you need to give an opportunity to everyone. So there are these little differences in both of these sectors, and each one of them really has got its own advantage and its own disadvantages or challenges. I don't call them disadvantages.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So Owen, I'd like to speak into, there's this, well, it doesn't exist anymore, but I think previously there was this perception that HR was all about hiring and firing. And I think for the longest time, people didn't even understand what an HR practitioner does.
That's true.
So I'd like for you to just speak into the different functions of the HR profession, just so that somebody who, is looking from a distance and wondering what does HR do, or somebody who still has that notion of, the hiring and the firing. Can you just break it down
the
for
paper
us?
pushers.
Exactly.
Just do filing of the leave forms. So with what you're saying, it's something that has actually been there, where and that's why you also see like some people, even someone who hasn't done HR, they will walk in and say, we can do HR. And even some institutions even run with that. Now, let me start by saying HR is a specialized field, in as much as it looks like it's anybody can walk in and do that.
Right.
On top of that, there is a legal requirement now. There is the Zambia Institute of Human Resource, the Act itself.
Yes.
It requires that a practitioner, the person who is undertaking HR work, should actually be registered with the Zambia Institute of Human Resource.
Yes.
And now, for you to be registered, you need to have studied some HR-related courses, and they have a process that they use to give you a practicing certificate.
Yes.
So it's important that institutions and individuals actually get those certifications to ensure that they are practicing, if they're practicing HR. That is a starting point. The third issue to look at is HR. I know we laugh a lot with even colleagues that in HR you hire, you just change the H like you were saying and put F, hire, fire. Now, I always say in between that, the hire and the fire,
there's a lot
there is a lot that goes on. And this is where I encourage individuals and institutions to really take time to understand HR, so that you can get the best out of even the HR professionals. First of all, in HR, and again, the HR itself, unfortunately, has got different levels. So sometimes, depending on who you have been exposed to, there's operational HR, and then there's strategic HR. Now, at the strategic level, you are basically looking at where are we going as an institution. And that is very, very critical, even as you work around the strategic plans of an institution. Those strategic plans have to go hand in hand with the HR strategies, so that you are saying, as an institution, we have the people, we have the plans to have the people that will help to deliver on the strategic direction of the institution.
Yes.
At operational level, of course, you're dealing with the usual employee complaints, leave, and so on. So what is it that is involved in HR? Outside from the strategy itself, there's strategy management in terms of HR strategy, having an idea of where you're going. That's number one, and you put in place all policies, all procedures, that you really need. Second level is what I call HR governance, or the policies and procedure aspects.
Yes.
This is where we are saying this is how we govern ourselves, the structures we should have, what should we be doing in these institutions, what policies should we have, and so on. Then thirdly, you can talk about now the the talent sourcing and talent management. How are we bringing in the people?
Yes.
Now, it's not, again, I always say, recruiting, you can basically just stand on the street and say, we are hiring.
Yes.
And you could find people. But are those the right people that you actually need? So that part, and that's why we're calling it talent, and I think the part of your program is talent.
Yes.
It's beyond just a human being who shows up and says, I'm an employee. No. Is this the right person actually that you should be having? So the talent sourcing, you are looking at, first of all, what kind of skills do we need? That's where the strategy comes in.
Yes.
Because at various stages of the organization, you might need different types of skills. There's the right people that we need, the numbers that you need, when should these people actually come? Should it be at the beginning of the year, or should it be 2-3 years down the road? Yes. So there is a lot of work that goes on. It's not just a matter of, no, we went for interviews.
Yes.
What people see is really at the tail end. So that recruitment, making sure the person, once you have done your recruitment, the person reports, you have done your induction, it's a lot of work to make sure that that person actually understands the institution they have joined. Beyond that, you're now talking of even issues to do with compensation.
Yes.
Benefits, compensation and benefits. You now say, what salaries are we even having in this institution? Again, in some institutions, you already have the salaries set. In other institutions, you have to carry out salary surveys so that you understand what is obtaining on the market.
Yes.
You also now have to sit down and look at your own ability to pay. So there's a lot of calculation, and then this is actually, people say, well, isn't it just to know that people are paying 5,000 for this position?
Yes.
No, it's beyond that. That is a salary that the person sees, but we then start to calculate the total cost to the company. So we are loading on the gross, we load the cost of NAPSA, NEMA, workers' compensation, skills levy, gratuity, the cost of leave days, the fuel, talk time, everything.
Yes.
And then you have the total cost to the company. So again, it's a lot of work. It's not something I've seen, and I meet people and say, okay, so can you help us with this? It's really something you have to really understand how it is done. Compensation issues, the benefits, the leave days, what really benefits go to the employees. So this part, there is a part where you're applying it to the employees, but there's also a part where you planned for it and budgeted for it.
Yes.
So that's why sometimes employees can say, well, we have been looking forward to this, but this company is not giving us. It's because they already worked out the numbers and they know that they cannot afford it. Also, some institutions they have and they give to the employees. So there is all that work which comes to compensation and benefits. Beyond that, you also have performance management.
Yes. Very critical.
Very, very critical. Again, you are saying the people that I have, and I'm paying this amount of salary every month. How am I managing them? So in HR now, we are looking at, do you have even the target set for that particular period or the year?
Yes.
Are the managers even trained? Do they even know how to supervise and monitor the employees? So you your work is now in HR to make sure that the people have the capacity, including the employees themselves. Do they even understand what they should be working on? So your job is to make sure either you're training or the managers go for training, so you just basically make sure that they know even when to do their appraisals.
Nice.
Because even there's things that look like they're simple. I mean, we can just sit to do the appraisals.
Yes.
That thing is very difficult, Some managers,
behind it.
There is a science behind it. Some of the managers will run and try to do the appraisal at home. They don't, because they don't want to have this conflict with the employees. So, but you have to help them to understand there has to be fairness, and this is how you kind of the science behind it, how you do it in a professional manner, nothing personal, and how you give feedback even to the employee. So all that goes in the performance management and reward. What are you even going to give to these employees?
Yes.
Is it a 13th check? Is it a bonus of some kind? Is it monetary? Again, that would have gone again back into the budgeting.
Yes.
So you have a system that allows you to make sure that the employees are rewarded. So that HR has to look at all those things. Beyond performance management, you again have training and development. The people you're working with. are you giving them the capacity for them to deliver?
Do they have the right skills?
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes people say, no, but we hire people who are very, who have the degrees.
Yes.
A degree is just a degree. In the workplace, there are specific skills that you need. Maybe how you do certain analysis, how you handle maybe the investors or other community, the stakeholders, or is it your Excel? What exact skills do these employees that I have actually need? Sometimes it's even how do they work together. So training and development becomes very critical to ensure that now people can have the skills that they need. And HR has to look into those things.
Nice.
Beyond that, you have your disciplinary and grievance issues.
Yes.
That's the one that a lot of people know about, So, yeah, we are going for a hearing.
Yes.
Again, even for that hearing to happen, there's a lot of work that HR has to do.
Yes.
They have to make sure that they have read the law, they have read the policies, and this person has actually committed an offense, and have they constituted the right committee to even look at that? Because if you even go against your own procedure, you will lose a case in court. So this is where I say HR work, it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of things that are done in the background which people don't even see. All the way to staff separation, the firing that people know, So even staff separation has to be done in a professional manner. And you also even have to look at what type of separation is this. Is an employee resigning? What will they be entitled to? Are you the one are you declaring them redundant? What is the package? Are you firing them, the usual firing? What will be the package, So is it a retirement? What will be the package? So again, you have to look at the conditions of service, the contract, what the law says, and make sure that everything is done. You deal with their finance or accounting department, and make sure the person is paid. You give them the certificate of service. You shake hands. You close on a professional man.
Nice, nice. That's very comprehensive, and I think it has helped to demystify the notion that the HR practice is just two-sided, the hiring and the firing. There is a lot that goes on in between. So in terms of the mindset and the skills that an HR practitioner should possess, can you just speak into, firstly, the mindset? What kind of mindset should you have if you are going to be a successful HR practitioner? And also just speak into some of the key skills that you should possess.
Now again, in HR, for me, the biggest thing to look at is that, first of all, it's the critical understanding that you are there to ensure that both the employer and the employees get the best out of that relationship. Remember, even by law, when you look at Section 3 of the Employment Code, it provides for a definition for the employment relationship. It's the two parties, the employee and the employer, they have come together. Now, one of the things that kill us a lot in human resource is that there is a huge tendency to be on the side of one. Either you are an HR who's just speaking on behalf of employees, hey, employees are suffering, hey, employees this,
There's no balance.
There is absolutely no balance. There are other HR practitioners also, just because they want to be super nice to the employer, for whatever, to protect their job, they are just, in a company, there's this, and the guy or the lady is just on the part of the employer, no regard for what the employees are going through, the challenges they could be experiencing. So you take a stance where for you it's just what the company wants, company. What I advise is be in the middle. For me, that's the most critical thing, because then you can start to understand, first of all, you were hired by the institution. The institution has got its own interest. What it wants to deliver on its mandate. Now, to deliver on that mandate, it needs the people. So you have to understand the interest of the employer. What do they want? Where are we going? Then the employees. When the employee starts work, the employee also has interest. I'm giving a service as an employee. I want to get paid, and I want to have an environment where I can enjoy, I can be happy, I can feel valued. There are all these interests that employees have. Even before we talk about all the other stakeholders, the general public and the institutions, but just for these two who are in this relationship, you have to understand their interests. Once you understand their interests, then you can advise now. You can have, now the skills to advise. How do you go about it? It requires, beyond the skill to advise, you have to have the technical knowledge around the law.
Yes.
Why am I emphasizing the issue around the law? Most of the times, and again, I see this, it is very easy for you, Mulumba, to say, we should give people off.
Yes.
But who cares? Maybe the employer wants to deliver on certain, maybe it's a project they want to finish.
Yes.
And you are saying, no, people should knock off at 17. Why? Then it goes back now to what we are talking about. You have the ability to advise as a case skill, have the knowledge around the labor laws, because you should ensure that there is serious compliance in your institution. You understand the law. When you are talking, it's not about you. It's not about, no, this is the way I feel. No. I always say, you talk to your employer and say, look, sir, in line with section XYZ of this law, this is what is required.
Yes.
In line with our own policy, it says this. All right? In that way, you lessen the amount of work you have to do in terms of trying to convince, because the employer will see. Then, even when it comes to the employees, it is the same thing. You will be explaining to them, because employees, remember, they also have their own interests.
Yes.
You can then be saying, my friend, look, we would love to help you in this case, like this, like this. However, there's this thing here, the policy here, the law says this.
Yes.
Because sometimes employees, they're just human beings. They just want whatever it is that can be given to them. So even with their demands, you should then be able to show them what they are legally entitled to.
Yes.
So that they can then, sometimes employees don't even know. So they don't get to even enjoy their own rights. So you should help them to understand their rights. So the knowledge around the laws become very important. Knowledge around your policies also become very, very important. The other thing is the negotiation skills. They are very critical. You need, in both cases, you will be negotiating. With the employer, with the employees, it's always going to be there. The employer, like I said, has got interest. They want to deliver on certain things. They want to make profits. They want to deliver on a project or whatever it is, their mandate. Now, as they are trying to do that, sometimes it will be some level of friction with the employees.
Yes.
So you have to be able to negotiate and say, when you go into the boardroom there, this is what we're looking at, and how does it benefit the employees? Sometimes because you want to increase salaries or you want to increase conditions of service.
Yes.
So you should be able to be there and negotiate with the employer. And sometimes you have to reach all the way to the board. So you cannot be in HR and you say, I tell colleagues, you can't tell me, no, I don't like like in our language, you say, I don't like talking. You can't say you're in HR and you say, I don't know, because part of our work is really to communicate. So negotiation and communication are very critical in HR, because you really want to put your points across so that
very clearly
they can understand what is it that you're trying to do, and again, both, like I said, employer and employees, they need to see. Even with employees, you will be doing a lot of communication, negotiation.
Yes.
You talk to them. Sometimes they wanted certain things which you can't deliver. Sometimes you will be able to deliver, and everybody is happy. So you have to really be able to negotiate and communicate. The other aspect, key skill and knowledge that I think an HR person should have is the business knowledge.
Yes.
Now, I know some HR, they work in an NGO, they work maybe in government.
Yes.
And when I say these things and people say, but us, we are not into business. No, you can't tell me that. Every HR has to understand the business of the employer.
Yes.
What does that mean? The business of the employer is the reason why that employer exists. So if you are in an NGO, for instance, and you are an HR, you should know, why is this NGO there?
Yes.
Why was it created? Because your understanding of the business of the employer then helps you to align your HR work. Remember, I talked about the HR strategies.
Yes.
You align your HR work with where the employer wants to go.
Yes.
You can be in mainstream government. Even in government, you need to understand the government of the day that I'm serving, where does it want to do? You cannot be, government is going this way, you're a government employee and you're also going another way. What are you doing? if you are in a private company, the company wants to maybe make certain profits, or it wants to deliver on certain projects. Again, you have to be there to understand what that company wants to achieve.
Yes.
So the idea around the understanding the business of the employer becomes very, very critical. There are so many skills and knowledge that I think HR needs to have. You need to be able to also have the, you should be hungry to do a lot of research.
Yes.
You should, because a lot of things come up, new things. You can't be using things for 1960s chakuti and just be comfortable. And I see this, especially HR, where you are in an institution where
applying personnel management.
Because things are changing.
Yes.
So you need to be in a space where you can research and find out, okay, what is happening now? If you have also different groups of employees, you have the old people, you have the young ones. What do the old people or old employees want? What do the young ones want? You need to research so that even your policies and your practices will be aligned. Otherwise, you'll be talking of retirement packages, which are very good, which you have in your policies.
Yes.
The young person doesn't care about that. He wants something that now,
yes.
Where we can have fun, I can have more money in my pockets, go and chill with my friend. So by you researching, spend time to understand what is happening, it helps you a lot. And also, really networking with colleagues. I always tell people, you cannot just be in your shell and you say, no, I'm in HR. What are you doing to yourself? Go out there, network, ask questions, because sometimes we feel we are going through a lot of difficulties, but even our colleagues might have experienced those things. Of course, there are confidentiality issues. We are not saying now you spill all the beans about your company, but have a network and a support system so that you can then learn from each other and even just sharpen yourself. Sometimes even just when you're making a decision, you can still talk to one of your colleagues and say, look, I have this case, this is the way I've analyzed it, and I'm thinking of going this way.
What do you think?
What do you think?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. You brought about something that is very interesting to me in the last response that you gave, and this is basically the bridge that has to be equalized between the new generation that is coming to the workspace, the Gen Zs now, versus people that have been in the institutions for quite a while. I know a lot of organizations are struggling with this. How can HR come in and bridge this gap between the new entrants in the businesses versus the older generation, and how are we just making sure that there's that synergy within the teams?
Yeah, quite interesting. So with now for the HR, I say first of all, look at yourself first. Where are you standing in this? Because yourself kind of affects even your approach.
Yes.
By that I mean, if you're an HR who's young, you are more likely going to embrace the younger people because you are speaking the same language, and their demands, their wants, and what they desire is really what you can easily associate with.
Yes.
Compared to the older generation. Again, if you're an HR who is in that category of the older generation, you're looking at the young ones and like, these kids, what do they want?
Yes.
We've provided everything. But, and that's why I say it starts with you to really analyze yourself. Where am I? Before I even make judgments about the other category, whether old or young and so on.
Yes.
You need to be in a space where you are looking at, like you said, what is the intersection here? We are looking at young people, older people being employees.
Yes.
That's the intersection. That's where everything meets. Now, your focus as HR now becomes, how do you make this workplace to be something that the older and the younger can feel that this is a place where they want to be.
Yes.
And that now goes into, first of all, looking at your own policies, what have you put in place? Policies, just a nice paper and your pronouncements. It's just one thing.
Yes.
Secondly, now you have to look at your own practices. What are you actually going to be practicing in this institution? So practice now goes to towards the management of an institution. How should managers start behaving towards young people? I'm assuming, for instance, that your managers are even older a little bit.
Yes.
How do they now manage the young people? Sometimes now it goes to those things we talked about earlier on, where you have to now do training and development even for your managers.
Yes.
You have to do programs that align with team building to kind of create synergy around the team. But also it goes towards you making sure that you have a strategy around everybody to understand why they are there.
Yes.
What's the mandate of the institution, and what is it that the team is trying to achieve? You start reducing the gaps. But now it goes, I talked about practices. It goes now further to how are you going to be interacting?
Yes.
What culture now are you going to create in the institution? The culture that you create, you have to be intentional about it. You can't just leave things hanging. You need to now think, okay, this is where we are. We have young people. What do they like? What we want to now create is some activities for them.
Yes.
Make them feel they're getting involved, they're happy. Also, when I talk about culture, I also mean that there has to be some level of mindset change between the older and the young. The young ones, you need to spend time to help them to understand the older people they're working with, because there are also differences in priorities. A young person, for instance, could be there working and they want to do things last minute. Their boss has been used to being very thorough.
Yes.
And this guy is submitting work very late, which for him, it's just, he's ticking a box, I submitted.
Yes.
And it is super stressing the other one, who's supervising them. Then all of a sudden, they're like, look, this chap is not serious, I need him fired.
Yes.
But then you're firing them, what have they failed to deliver? So again, it goes into your performance management. So there is a lot of work to bridge this gap, to simply make sure that the younger generation, you understand what they like, how do they actually even want to work. Some of them, for instance, when it comes to, let's say, certain professions, I mean, they are very quick even with analysis. They are very good with, researching. Now you have artificial intelligence, while the other guys will be there trying to crack their head about around certain things. The guy will go into ChatGPT, throw in the question, he has the answers, and it's done. And for the other person, no, that's like cheating.
Yes.
But the results are the same. Sir, even if you spent your 100 years, you still arrive at the same result. So the key issue is now to make sure that the older generation and the younger ones, they can actually synchronize. The speed and the energy that the young ones have should now be kind of given a direction by the older ones in terms of the wisdom. How do we actually get to deliver? So it's about making these two really work very, very well. Then you can get better results. The moment you allow them to start working separately, that divide is not good for an institution. You then create an institution where a younger person just says, I'm reporting, just I want to get paid.
Absolutely.
And you really don't want to create that kind of a situation. Also, I say there is also a slight difference. For instance, the older generation, they have grown to a level where they also have a couple of responsibilities. Okay? Now those responsibilities around family, paying rent.
Yes.
When the guy is going for work, he knows why he's working.
Absolutely.
You have a younger person, they are there, they just want, maybe others, they will even say, I just want to network. I just want to also feel valued. Oh, my father told me to just at least do some work.
Yes.
They don't have maybe certain pressures, financial and whatever. So you find that even when it comes to managing the employee, the older person would think, look, you should take work very, very serious.
Yes.
This is livelihood, But the young person, like, what are you talking about? I can walk away tomorrow if I...
And there will be no implications with my life.
So it's important that both managers and just generally employees, older ones, they understand how to work with the young ones, and the young ones understand how to work with the older ones. There are those who want to be respected, Mr. This.
Yes.
Other young people have grown in homes where they even call their father, hey, John, Francis.
Yes.
You can't do that in a certain place, maybe in the workplace. So HR's job really is very critical at that point to make sure that when you have that kind of gap in terms of generations, you help them to work together and have fun. Like workplace, we spend so much time.
Absolutely, it's a place where
you have fun. Even help the older ones to, they start to loosen up.
To loosen up a bit. I really love that because in my mind, I was asking myself, look, there's a lot of attrition with the Gen Zs and the younger generation in the workplace.
True.
But I think you've just made me understand why that is happening. I think we are not paying attention to the specific needs that they have and that they want, and just tailoring our policies to speak into them. So I think that is very, very critical. That's so now, Owen, I'd like for you to just now speak into the aspect of HR as a profession and the role that we play in any business setup. I know that you've talked about why it is important for an HR practitioner to have the strategic objective of a company, but I've also realized that in a lot of institutions, HR is sidelined at the table. Why is that?
HR sometimes, again, like I said, it's about what levels are we actually talking about? Sometimes you have HR who has been put at the lowest stage. So their input into the whole strategy and how the company operates is very low.
Yes.
And the institutions tend to only see that HR as just somebody good enough for, filing reforms, salary advances, which is a very sad thing. Now, that's on the part of the institution. On the part of the HR ourselves, one of the things, and I understand because I mentor a lot of HR people in Zambia, and there's a huge cry, I have tried, and my institution just doesn't listen. One of the things I encourage colleagues is that, back to what I was talking about, invest your time and energy in understanding the business of your employer so that you can start making valuable contributions. Now, I was very slow about all that statement.
Yes.
Because sometimes in HR we tend to be comfortable with just doing the operational things, which anybody can do.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you can have a secretary. She doesn't have to have done HR. She can easily photocopy. She can easily file the leave forms. Now, do we want ourselves as HR to just remain at that level? Or we start investing our energy in understanding the business, meaning start studying the business itself, a business of the employer. You start looking at how does the company operate. I'm now talking about HR themselves in terms of how they should apply themselves. The more you understand the business of your employer, the more you can start making contributions that are valuable. You then start looking at where are we going. Even if you are being left, you find that slowly you are being called in meetings. Now, every little opportunity you are being given, you should demonstrate. And I'm not talking about you being desperate, where in every meeting you are lifting your hand. No. I'm talking about having impact.
Yes.
Meaning, if you are going into meetings, one of the things that kills us as HR, you have only seen and you are memorizing, our employees were 65, two left, and that's the only thing you know. You go into a meeting, that's the only thing you know. You can't even ask any questions. You can't even. So my point is, understand your work beyond just HR, the four walls in your office.
Yes.
Understand what every other department is doing so that you can start making valuable contributions, asking intelligent questions in those meetings. Eventually people start to say, no, actually we need this person. I've been in such spaces. I worked with the Canadians, for instance, and at some point HR is not even part of the exco. And we were there, okay, no pressure. So, but as time is going, they start to realize the more questions, the more things. I was put as part of the exco. And many places, for me where I've been, you have to demonstrate. Some institutions already have set up of who is management executive and the committees that are there. You have to contribute. And the more you are being given those opportunities, even to be in those kind of meetings, and you help people to understand and appreciate HR, you'll find that even when they're now making plans, they'll say, has HR, what do you think about this?
Yes.
Exactly. Because there's nothing that a company is going to do where HR is not involved. That I've refused. They absolutely nothing. If you are going to go and make a new market, for instance, you're a private company, you are making certain sales. If you are going to set up an office somewhere, who is there? It's a human being.
Yes.
Who brings this human being? It's HR. So why is finance, for instance, the only one calculating, for us to set up the office in Kabwe, we need this?
Yes.
HR should be there. Okay, so this is how we do the structure. This is what we do. So beyond the basic things that in HR we do, as HR practitioners, we need to upgrade ourselves in terms of our skills, understanding business, acquire certain small skills and knowledge around business itself, so that even certain things like structures, salaries, how does this impact on the business, so that as you talk, you can then be seen to be valuable to the institution, and also helping management to see how they can run the business better, so that they get the best out of the employees. Otherwise, like you said, it's a sad situation where HR is sidelined. But again, this is it's a perception which has been there for a long time, and that's why I'm actually calling upon like HR to say, how best do we start applying ourselves?
Yes.
And talking to CEOs or directors, even shareholders. This is why I'm always saying, when you're given an opportunity, can you actually, I'm emphasizing more on the HR practitioners themselves.
Yes.
How much have you invested in your ability to make presentations, your ability to analyze cases, your ability to see this is where we are going as an institution? Because sometimes it's just in a meeting, they're asking you, and they're like, I don't know. How many people do we have? That one I can confirm. I need to check with my assistant. What are you doing? If people are discussing, like I said, the expansion of the business, you should already be seeing, they are talking in here about the expansion. What are we going to do? What is our structure? Who is going to be supervising who? Do we have a salary? And people will already be saying, okay, there's something that is. Sometimes they're given a chance to talk to maybe a shareholder. Can you actually open your mouth and make a presentation or even talk? You're talking, you have been given a chance to talk to the directors. So it's about us investing a lot in terms of upgrading our skills, your negotiations, your planning, and just basically how you communicate your ideas.
Absolutely. I love that. So, Owen, as we're winding up our conversation, I'd like for us to speak into two critical areas. The first one is mental health and well-being in the workplace. It is something that has recently come to the fore in any specific setup. The need for organizations to embrace the aspect of mental health and well-being in the workplace. What role does HR play in ensuring that we foster a culture of a positive work environment in terms of mental health and well-being?
Yeah, so mental health is really a very important aspect of HR. I'm actually very passionate about it. It's my field.
Nice.
I come from my neuropsychology background and psychology. It's really something I'm very, very passionate about. So I must make mention, when it comes to mental health, look, employees spend a lot of time at work.
Yes.
And much of the stress that they have in their lives has something to do with the workplace. Of course, where they're coming from home and so on, they have their own issues there, as employees, but much of it is coming from the workplace. And sometimes it's coming from the workplace and it's affecting the home, and home affecting the work. You see, the guy was knocking off late, he goes home, the wife is on him, hey, why are you coming late?
He goes for work, he's affected.
It's already affected, so it's, look, employees go through a lot. There are employees who are struggling themselves, they are sick, and maybe they have not even told anybody.
Yes.
Some have their own children who are sick, or their parent is dying, and they are going through a lot. Others have financial problems, but they never say it. So all you are seeing is somebody, for instance, whose maybe productivity starts to go down. Sometimes they are seeing outbursts when they are just responding to a colleague. You're even, hey,
yes.
but
Oh,
it's just a simple issue. But you don't know what the person is. Their tolerance levels have gone low because of all the stress they are having. So HR's role really becomes extremely important in making sure, for instance, that first of all, you should have policies that focus on employee well-being. It's actually a requirement, for instance, in the Section 95 of the Employment Code, that you should have wellness policies.
Yes.
Because this thing, even government is recognizing the importance of wellness and mental health being part of wellness. You should be looking at what policies can we have in place and what practices can we have to allow the employees, first of all, to feel supported. Also, where employees have a challenge, what do you do? Do they come to you? So this is where now HR also has to create an environment where people can feel they can go there and they can open up. Again, issues of confidentiality. HR, when somebody tells us something, it's now
it's
everywhere now. Did you know? That's why he behaves like that. You know what he's going through. Why are you doing that? In the process, everybody sees, and in the process they say, oh, okay, that's not a place to go to if I have problems. I'll keep it to myself. So HR needs to be a place where people can go. They can vent out whether they have problems in their home, they have problems with their bosses, sometimes they have problems with their own juniors. There should be a place where employees can go and also feel, okay, we can have our issues sorted out. Sometimes employees are just, maybe they want some money, but they don't even know how to go about it. And so HR has to be there. Apart from just the policies and so on, it's the actual practice. HR also has to influence the management, the supervisors, helping them to understand that they need to take care of their employees. Because sometimes it's the way the employers or the managers and supervisors or line managers treat the employees, which creates this stress in the company. So there is a lot of aspect around training, and I go to different companies in my private time to train companies. Managers need to understand that they have a big role to play in making sure that employees feel they're happy where they're working and they're feeling valued. And of course, HR himself or herself needs to find a place also for him or her to also relieve. And
absolutely.
Yeah, because sometimes we are just bottling up everybody's problems.
Absorbing everything.
Yeah, that's why I talked about that network and the support system for HR also, because you need someone who can come and say, look, I'm really having a bad day at this thing, but it's not everybody that you should be sharing everything with.
Absolutely. I love that. So my very last question for you is, what does the future look like for the human resource profession? And what would you say are some of the trends that have excited you in the space, and where do you see the profession going?
For me, the profession has a very bright future, and first of all, we have the laws that now protect, for instance, in this country, but also just in other countries. You have laws that protect the HR practice, but that is just one thing.
Yes.
You are also looking at HR itself being more and more recognized as an important component in terms of how companies are being run. And that, for me, HR practitioners need to make sure, like I said, make sure that they get the best out of this, where they're being recognized, to be in the boardrooms, making decisions. HR going forward should really make sure that we bring the A game, you bring best skills, bring your best foot forward, and make sure HR is contributing to institutions going forward, developing or making profits, and employees being happy. The future also looks to be bright for HR, but HR practitioners need to invest in learning how to manage diverse workforces.
Yes.
We have the workforce around the young people, the old. We now have our colleagues who are identifying themselves as whatever they identify themselves,
he
or she. So how are you going to handle those kind of things? So you cannot bury your head and say, I don't want to deal with this kind of things. They are coming. And in many institutions, in many countries, they are there.
Yes.
So our job in HR and going forward is really to see what does this mean, what does the law say, what is our culture looking like. Then also these issues of human rights, how do I make sure that the people that I'm working with, there is some level of diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely.
That is also critical. The other aspect is around technology. I've been talking a lot about technology and how disruptive it is also with artificial intelligence.
Yes.
I see sometimes, well, now that is in the US, please, these things are here now.
Yes.
So as HR, how do you make sure that you have incorporated issues of AI and technology in everything you're doing? Because the work, for instance, that we love, you go for these workshops as an example. Oh, we are going to do some document. So you pay, you go, you spend money to be in a lodge for maybe 1 week or 3 days or so, you're developing some document.
Yes.
That document, if I put on my AI, I'll develop it in 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yet, so you paid for that person to be there. Or you have policies. And again, even for managers, how do you now make sure that the employee that you gave work to do for 3 days or 1 week, they're actually not now just on social media, because that work was already done in 30 seconds or in 1 minute. So the future of HR practitioners can't really bury their heads when it comes to technology. It's here. We have to see issues of plagiarism, issues of the content that is now being generated from AI. How do we make sure that we can actually make use of it, and the employees actually are trained? And I've been doing this with a number of companies. It's important that people know how to make use of AI. The issues around remote work is another issue. Those who are working from home, because from COVID times, people now, some companies have continued to work remotely. How do you make sure that people are being supported? How do you also look around the issue around information and confidential information for the company?
Yes. Where
people continue to working from home, but also with AI that I was talking about.
Yes.
So there is a lot of work in the HR space, and it's important that if we want to make ourselves very relevant, we have to be ahead. We have to make sure that we really understand. Otherwise, even the HR space itself, technology is taking away some of the functions. I can sit here and develop questions. I don't need committees.
Yes.
Even for screening, using AI, I just make sure that I develop it in such a way that when you're applying, it's already telling me this one out, this one in.
It filters out.
So even technology is affecting even the HR profession itself.
Yes.
These things that you do in terms of creating manuals. I see people, we are creating manuals. We have 10-man commit. What are you doing? The technologies are now that you can do that very fast. So
absolutely.
Even the HR space is being affected. It's important that people know where we are going.
Amazing. Yeah. Owen, I'd really like to thank you so much for the time that you've spent dissecting the HR practice. I think you have not disappointed at all. You've touched all the critical areas that a lot of our viewers and our listeners would have wanted to know about how important HR is. And I've also liked the fact that you've also talked about the trends as well as what the future looks like for the HR space. So thank you so much for coming through. So this has been another exciting episode of the Talent Plug podcast. Please do remember to subscribe, follow, like, and just tag someone along to get to this space, because in this specific space, we unpack quite a lot in terms of different talents, different professions, and you definitely get to learn a lot from the guests that we're having on board. So thank you so much, and till the next episode, stay inspired.